The thing about Krev 9 Station was that nobody asked questions. Not the good kind, anyway. You could dock a ship held together with prayer and stolen parts, walk into the commerce district with blood on your sleeves, or sell something that screamed when you opened the container. And as long as you paid your berthing fees and didn't damage the hull integrity, station management would simply nod and mind their own profitable business, which made it the perfect place for the pit. Official designation: Krev 9 Sanctioned Combat Entertainment Venue. What everyone actually called it. Exactly what it was. A hole in the station's lower decks, where species from across known space gathered to watch other species try to kill each other for money, glory, or because they'd made catastrophically poor life choices. The pit had rules, technically. Contestants had to sign waivers in 17 languages. Medical teams stood by. The arena floor was equipped with emergency force fields that would deploy if someone's vital signs dropped below species-specific thresholds. Deaths were discouraged, mostly because they required paperwork. But pain? Pain was the whole point. Grendax the Unbroken stood in the center of the arena, 4 arms spread wide, basking in the crowd's rhythmic chanting. He was Thracian, 8 feet of dense muscle and chitinous armor plating that had evolved on a high-gravity world where everything was trying to crush, poison, or eat you, usually simultaneously. His species had conquered their planet by being tougher than every single thing that wanted them dead. The current fight, if it could even be called that, had lasted 11 seconds. His opponent, a Krill shock trooper who'd survived 3 campaigns in the outer reaches, was currently being carried out on a stretcher, making a sound like wind through broken pipes. "Next!" Grendax's voice boomed through the arena's audio system. His translator chip gave it an echo that rattled in spectators' chest cavities. "Who dares?" The crowd loved this part. The call, the dramatic pause, the inevitable swagger of whatever idiot thought they could do better than the last corpse. Except this time, the challenger's queue booth lit up with an entry that made the bookmaker's screens flicker in confusion. Species: human. Weight class: lightweight. Combat certification: none. Waiver status: pending. Vrix, the Quarian bookmaker who'd been running odds at the pit for 6 cycles, stared at his display like it had personally insulted his ancestry. His translator struggled with what came out of his beak. "Is this a malfunction?" "Tell me this is a malfunction." His assistant, a young Venathi with too many eyes and not enough sense, checked the registration. "No malfunction. She's at the challenger window now. A human. Calls herself, it translates roughly to doctor." "Doctor?" Vrix's beak clicked in what might have been laughter or a mild seizure. "A human doctor wants to fight Grendax the Unbroken? Apparently." Every species had their suicide traditions. The Quarians had the flight of Final Dawn. The Kronak had the Last Hunt. Maybe humans had something similar, and nobody had bothered to document it because Earth was, how did the Galactic Survey put it? A garden world of minimal strategic interest inhabited by a species that has barely achieved interstellar travel and demonstrates no notable biological advantages. Vrix pulled up what little information existed on humans: bipedal, carbon-based, middling strength, average speed, no natural weapons, armor, or venom, no psionic abilities, no redundant organs. Their homeworld was classified as temperate, which in galactic terms meant boring. They'd been granted limited travel permits about 20 cycles ago, and since then, humans had spread throughout accessible space doing, well, nothing remarkable. They took jobs nobody else wanted: maintenance, sanitation, medical research, administrative work, harmless, forgettable. Soft. And now one wanted to fight a Thracian champion. "What odds should I post?" his assistant asked. Vrix thought about it, thought about his profit margins, thought about how spectacular this was going to be, in the worst possible way. 20,000 to 1, he said. against the human. Down at the Challenger's window, the human in question was reading through the waiver with the kind of careful attention that suggested she actually understood the 73 ways she was about to legally die. She was small by Galactic standards, barely 5.5 feet, maybe 140 pounds if you included her clothes, dark hair pulled back in something practical, no visible cybernetics, no armor. She wore the standard-issue jumpsuit of a research facility worker, and her only accessory was an ID badge that identified her as Dr. Keiko Chen, Xenobiology Department, Level 7 clearance. The Vrexian clerk at the window was doing his best to talk her out of it. "Ma'am, doctor, I need to be clear about what you're signing. Grendax has 47 consecutive victories, 63 if you count unofficial matches. He is killed in this arena. The medical teams are good, but they're not miracle workers." "I understand," she said. Her voice was calm, measured, the kind of tone you'd use to discuss weather patterns. "Your species isn't rated for this level of combat. Humans are classified as..." He checked his screen. "Physical durability, moderate, pain threshold, average, recovery rate, standard. You have no enhanced healing, no armored skin, no..." "I'm aware of my species' limitations," Chen interrupted gently. "That's why I'm here." The clerk's mandibles twitched. To die aware? To test a hypothesis. Before he could formulate a response to that particular brand of insanity, she signed the waiver. Her handwriting was neat, precise. A doctor's signature, if doctors made house calls in hell. "I'll need to register your combat style for the arena records," the clerk said weakly. Chen considered this. "Put down applied anatomy? That's not a..." "It will be." She walked away from the window toward the preparation chambers, leaving the clerk staring at the waiver like it might explain itself. Above them, the arena's safety AI had begun its standard pre-match analysis. It scanned Chen as she walked, building a threat assessment profile in microseconds. Species, Homo sapiens. Homeworld gravity, 1.0 standard. Bone density. Elevated? Muscular efficiency ratio. Coefficients. Unexpected. Neurological response time, Zodson-Vorgeheits, flagging for review. Cardiovascular capacity, both anomalous for stated activity level. The AI, which had successfully managed over 10,000 matches without incident, generated a preliminary warning. Then it checked its own calculations, decided it must have made an error, and filed the warning in a low-priority queue. The problem with artificial intelligence, even the sophisticated kind, was that it could only extrapolate from existing data. And the existing data on humans was thin, boring, and compiled by surveyors who'd spent maybe a week on Earth before declaring it adequately documented. Nobody had thought to ask the right questions. Questions like, what does a species develop when their homeworld has no natural advantages to give them? What happens to a predator that has to outwit everything it hunts? What kind of endurance evolves when you're neither the fastest nor the strongest, so you simply outlast everything else? What happens when fragility becomes a weapon? In the preparation chamber, Chen stretched. Basic movements. Shoulders, back, legs. She'd done this routine every morning for 20 years, ever since she'd left Earth. Maintenance for a body built on a planet where evolution's favorite joke was making absolutely everything trying to kill you, including the weather, the wildlife, and most of the plant life. A Therakian attendant brought her the standard arena equipment. Basic padding, a mouth guard, impact gloves. She waved them away. No equipment? Won't need it, she said. The attendant's translator made a sound like grinding gears. Confusion, probably. Or maybe it had the same survival instincts as its operator and was trying to shut down in protest. Chen pulled up her sleeve and checked her own vital signs on her personal monitor. Heart rate, 62. Blood pressure, 118/76. Adrenaline, baseline. Calm. She thought about her research. 6 cycles studying alien physiology, cataloging weaknesses, mapping nerve clusters, understanding that every species' greatest strength was also a vulnerability if you knew where to look. The Thracians were tough, yes. Nearly indestructible, absolutely. But nearly wasn't the same as completely, and indestructible didn't mean unbreakable if you understood the engineering. The preparation chamber door opened. The roar of the crowd spilled in like a physical force. Chen walked toward it, and somewhere in the station's betting halls, a human janitor placed a month's salary on an impossible outcome. Round 1. Knockout. The odds were beautiful. The arena floor was synthetic stone, designed to absorb blood and other fluids while providing adequate traction for species with claws, suction appendages, or magnetic feet. Chen's standard-issue boots made a soft squeak as she entered the light. Grendax turned to face her. For 3 full seconds, he simply stared. Then his translator managed to process something between a laugh and a cough. "They send me a mouse now?" What is this? Entertainment between real matches? The crowd's reaction rippled through the stands in waves of confusion and anticipation. In the upper decks, a group of Metherian traders were already demanding refunds. In the lower sections, where the serious gamblers sat, a few were checking if interspecies confusion was grounds to void bets. Chen stopped at her mark, 20 feet from the Thracian. She rolled her shoulders once, twice, like an athlete preparing for a particularly tedious training exercise. The referee, an automated drone designed to be faster than any competitor, hovered between them, projecting the rules in 17 languages simultaneously. Standard pit regulations, match ends on knockout, submission, or medical emergency. Killing blows were penalized but not prohibited. External weapons forbidden. Biological weapons were considered part of natural arsenal. "Combatants ready?" Grendax cracked 2 sets of knuckles. The sound echoed like snapping timber. Chen nodded once. The drone's light flashed green. What happened next would be analyzed, frame by frame, by xenobiologists for the next decade. Combat instructors would study it, philosophers would debate it, and bookmakers would weep over it. Grendax charged. It was the obvious move, the correct move, the only move that made sense. He had 4 arms, each capable of crushing carbon steel. He had armor plating that could deflect plasma fire. He had 300 pounds on her, and a reach advantage that made the fight geometrically impossible for her to win. So he charged, because why wouldn't he? Chen moved, not fast, not by human standards anyway. She'd clocked better times in her morning runs. But the crowd saw something their evolutionary experience couldn't process. A creature that should have been paralyzed by fear, frozen by survival instinct, locked in place by the simple biological imperative to not die horribly. Instead, she stepped left and forward simultaneously, a diagonal that took her inside Grendax's guard at an angle his species' shoulder joints weren't designed to compensate for. His first strike, a haymaker that could have pulverized her skull, hit air. She touched his extended arm. Just touched it, palm flat against the chitinous plating, and redirected its momentum by perhaps 3 degrees. Physics did the rest. Grendax, who weighed 600 pounds and had been moving at full charge, found his center of gravity suddenly negotiating. With vectors it hadn't anticipated. His own force became his enemy. He stumbled, overcorrected, and his shoulder hit the arena wall with a sound like a shuttle crash. The crowd went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence that happens when reality does something it's not supposed to do. In the commentary booth, a Zelthan sportscaster's 4 vocal cords tried to work simultaneously and failed. Did anyone else see... What did we just... His co-host, a retired Krill warrior who'd fought in actual wars, leaned forward. Replay that. Full sensor sweep. The holographic replay showed it from 6 angles. Enhanced thermal imaging revealed Chen's body temperature hadn't spiked. No adrenaline dump, no fight-or-flight response. Kinetic analysis tracked the force transfer. She'd absorbed maybe 10 pounds of pressure and redirected 800. That's not possible, the Zelthan whispered. The leverage ratios don't... They do if you know exactly where to push, the Krill said slowly. She turned him into his own weapon. Down in the arena, Grendax was getting up. Confused, yes. Embarrassed, absolutely. But now he was also angry, and anger made Thracians even more dangerous because it stripped away their caution. He came at her again, all 4 arms this time, no longer charging but advancing with a boxer's coordination. High-low combinations that could shred a battle tank. Chen didn't block. Blocking implied stopping force, and stopping force was how you broke bones when you were built like a human. Instead, she slipped, a rotation of her hips, a duck of her head, movement so economical they seemed lazy. Each of Grendax's strikes missed by millimeters, and every miss pulled him fractionally off balance. She was counting. Anyone watching her eyes could see it, measuring, calculating. A Venathi medical student in the stands grabbed her professor's arm. She's mapping his patterns. Look at her pupil dilation. She's processing his timing. Humans can't process information that fast, the professor said, but his voice carried no conviction. Then what is she doing? What Chen was doing was what humans had been doing for 300,000 years. Persistence predation. The same technique that let her ancestors chase antelope to exhaustion across African plains. The same strategy that made humans the endurance champions of Earth's food chain. She was waiting for him to make a mistake. Grendax threw a combination. Left, right, right, left. A pattern he'd used to win 47 consecutive matches. Predictable, powerful, proven. Chen's hand shot out, not to block, but to tap his 3rd arm mid-strike, disrupting his rhythm by a fraction of a second. His 4th arm, expecting the 3rd to have already landed, swung into empty space and pulled him rotating. That's when she struck. Not his head, not his chest, not any of the obvious targets that his armor protected. She hit the nerve cluster located 3 inches below his primary shoulder joint, in a gap in the chitinous plating that served as a biological hinge point, a spot she'd identified 6 months ago while conducting research on Thracian musculature for a paper on xenobiological stress responses. Her knuckles impacted with exactly 43 pounds of pressure. Not enough to break anything, but precisely calibrated to trigger a neuromuscular cascade that Thracian nervous systems interpreted as critical damage. Grendax's entire right side went numb. He stared at his arm, watching it hang uselessly. His translator couldn't find words for what his brain was trying to express. Chen didn't wait for him to adapt. She was already moving, circling to his weakened side, and her next strike found the mirror point on his left shoulder. 2 arms down. The crowd found its voice again, but this time it was pandemonium. Aliens were standing, shouting, demanding explanations in 15 different languages. The betting boards had frozen, unable to calculate odds for something that wasn't supposed to be happening. Grendax roared and swung with his remaining arms, desperation replacing technique. Chen ducked under the wild swing and drove her fist into his solar plexus. Or rather, the Thracian equivalent, the neural hub that coordinated his lower body functions. For a creature that weighed 600 pounds, Grendax fell with surprising grace. He hit the arena floor face first, conscious but paralyzed, every major nerve cluster temporarily shut down by strikes so precise they could have been surgical. The automated referee drone's sensors went berserk. Vital signs. Stable. Consciousness. Present. Ability to continue, 0. Knockout, the drone announced, its synthesized voice cracking slightly. Victor, Chen! The arena lights, which had been cycling through standard match colors, suddenly flashed red. Warning. Species risk assessment. Critical threat level. Unclassified, recommend immediate evaluation. The crowd barely noticed. They were too busy watching Chen walk calmly to her corner, her breathing barely elevated, while medical teams swarmed Grendax with neural stimulators in confusion. In the security office 3 levels up, alarms were screaming. And in the betting halls, one human janitor was quietly collecting the largest single payout in Krev 9 station history, a smile on his face that would have looked perfectly friendly if you didn't notice how carefully he was watching everyone's reactions. Calculating, just like the doctor. Learning, just like his species always did. The security office on Krev 9 station smelled like recycled air and bureaucratic panic. Chen sat in a chair designed for species with different skeletal structures, making her look even smaller than usual. Across the table, Counselor Thrace, a Bavarian whose skin shifted colors with emotional states, currently cycling through orange and purple, reviewed data on a holographic display. Beside him, Security Chief Corax, a mantid whose species communicated, primarily through mandible clicks, stood motionless. They'd been at this for 2 hours. Let me understand, Thrace said, his colors flickering toward red. You identified 17 exploitable weaknesses in Thracian physiology, cataloged them for academic purposes, and then used that research to systematically disable a trained combatant? 18 weaknesses, actually, Chen corrected. I only needed 3. Thrace's skin flashed white. Shock, or possibly rage, hard to tell. This isn't funny, Doctor. I wasn't joking. Corax's mandibles clicked rapidly. His translator rendered it as, background check confirms her credentials. Published researcher, specialization, comparative neurology and toxicology. 17 peer-reviewed papers on interspecies physiology. Security clearance for handling dangerous biological materials. Toxicology, Thrace repeated slowly. You study poisons. Among other things, understanding how to harm is fundamental to understanding how to heal. Can't develop antidotes without comprehending the mechanisms of damage. Chen leaned back, somehow making the uncomfortable chair look natural. Is there a specific charge you're filing, or is this conversation recreational? The arena AI flagged your species as an unregistered apex predator, Corax said. His mandibles went still, a mantid expression of deep concern. That designation hasn't been issued in 40 cycles. The last time was for the Zarath, who were subsequently banned from 70 systems. The Zarath metabolize radiation and hunt in packs across dimensional barriers, Chen pointed out. I'm a medical researcher who happens to know anatomy. You're a medical researcher who just defeated someone designed by evolution to be unkillable. Nothing is unkillable. That's not how biology works. There's always a vulnerability, a pressure point, a chemical imbalance, a structural flaw. She gestured at the holographic display showing her fight. Grendax is remarkable. His species adapted to survive a high-gravity, high-radiation world. But adaptation means specialization, and specialization creates dependencies. His nervous system prioritizes damage resistance over redundancy. Hit the right nodes, and it all cascades. Thrace's colors settled into a muddy brown. Confusion, trying to masquerade as authority. When Earth was surveyed, humans were classified as non-threatening, average physical capabilities, no natural weapons. Your own submission to the Galactic Assembly emphasized your species' peaceful nature and desire for cooperative integration. That's all accurate, Chen said. You just crippled someone with your bare hands. Also accurate. Those statements aren't contradictory. She paused. Did your surveyors ask about our planetary history? Our evolutionary pressures? They noted Earth as a garden world. Temperate climate, abundant resources, no apex predators. Thrace stopped, his colors drained to pale green. No apex predators except us. Chen finished. We're persistence hunters, Counselor. We're not fast, strong, or particularly durable. We won our planet by being relentless, adaptable, and smart enough to exploit every weakness we found. We tracked prey for days until they collapsed from exhaustion. We used tools because our hands were too soft. We developed language complex enough to teach each other where the jugular was. Corax's translator emitted a sound like grinding metal. Your entire species is optimized for killing things more powerful than yourselves. For surviving things more powerful than ourselves, Chen corrected. Slight difference, significant implications. The security chief activated a separate display. We've located 47 other humans on this station. Employment records show custodial services, food preparation, administrative assistance, technical maintenance, all low-profile positions. Sounds right. Humans integrate carefully. Or humans hide deliberately. Thrace's colors sharpened to accusatory crimson. You've been here 6 cycles. 6 cycles of studying every species that docked, cataloging their weaknesses, and nobody questioned it because it seemed like harmless research. Chen smiled, the expression somehow both friendly and unsettling. Counselor, I've written papers that could save thousands of lives. Cross-species medical protocols, toxin interactions, emergency response for biological incompatibilities. My research has literal humanitarian applications. And military ones, Corax added. Knowledge doesn't have morality, application does. She stood, slowly, making the movement non-threatening despite every alarm in the room suggesting otherwise. Am I being detained? Thrace and Corax exchanged what might have been glances in their respective species' communication styles. You violated arena regulations, Thrace said weakly. Concealment of biological advantages. I disclosed my species accurately. If your classification system failed to assess the threat level, that's an administrative failure, not fraud on my part. She moved toward the door. Besides, I signed a waiver accepting all risks. Nobody made Grendax do the same regarding his opponents. We're implementing new protocols, Corax said. Human participation in combat sports is being suspended pending review. 47 systems have already filed similar restrictions. That seems excessive. Is it? The mantid's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. How many of your species could do what you did? Chen considered the question with the same clinical detachment she'd shown while dismantling Grendax. Anyone with basic anatomical knowledge and sufficient motivation. We're taught biology in secondary education. Most humans know where the major nerve clusters are, at least for our own species. Extrapolating to others just requires research and observation. She paused at the door. Though I suspect most wouldn't bother. We generally prefer not to fight. It's exhausting, and the outcomes are unpredictable despite preparation. Yet you did. I had a hypothesis to test. Which was? She smiled again, and Thrace's colors flickered through confusion, fear, and something that might have been respect. That assumptions are more dangerous than claws. That looking harmless is its own kind of weapon. That everyone is so busy checking for teeth and armor, they forget to wonder what a species develops when it has neither. She opened the door. The galaxy classifies threats based on what can kill you in a straight fight. But humans didn't survive by fighting straight. The door closed behind her with a soft hiss. Thrace and Corax sat in silence for a long moment. Pull the original Earth survey report, the counselor finally said. The complete version, not the abstract. The security chief complied. Pages of data flooded the display. Climate assessments, resource catalogs, biological surveys that listed Earth's fauna: lions, bears, crocodiles, sharks, poisonous plants, venomous insects. And at the bottom, a footnote that someone had apparently deemed irrelevant. Note: dominant species, Homo sapiens, has no natural predators. Query: how does a species become dominant on a death world without evolutionary advantages? Recommend follow-up study. Recommended follow-up. Never filed. Status: archived under low priority research. Thrace's colors went completely white. Get me the human liaison, he whispered. All of them. Every human on this station. I want to know exactly what we let in. Outside, Chen walked through the corridor toward the medical bay where Grendax was recovering. She had genuine concern for his condition. Her strikes had been precise, but biology sometimes surprised you. Also, she wanted to apologize, not for winning, for the necessity of proving a point that shouldn't have required proof. Behind her, alarms continued to sound, and somewhere in the station's central processing, an AI was frantically recalculating threat assessments for a species that had seemed, right up until it mattered, completely harmless. 3 cycles later, the pit installed new regulations. Human participation. Forbidden. Not discouraged. Not restricted. Forbidden, with enforcement protocols that included bioscanners at every entrance, and AI monitoring sophisticated enough to detect human genetic markers in a crowd of 10,000. The galaxy's response had been swift, unanimous, and slightly hysterical. But the truly interesting developments were happening in the spaces between panic and policy. Joraz, a mid-tier Quellan fighter who'd won exactly half his matches through technique and the other half through opponents underestimating his species' flexibility, sat in a training facility across from the human called Marcus. The human wore maintenance coveralls and had introduced himself as just a guy who fixes air recyclers. "Show me again," Joraz said. "The thing with the weight distribution." Marcus demonstrated, moving his feet in a pattern that looked absurdly simple until you tried it and discovered your entire center of gravity was now a suggestion rather than a certainty. "It's about making your opponent's strength work against them," Marcus explained. "You don't need to be stronger. You need to be smarter about physics. Earth's gravity is pretty average, galactically speaking, but our martial arts evolved from trying to kill each other for thousands of years with nothing but our bodies. We got creative. Chen did this to Grendax. Chen's got medical training, which is honestly terrifying in a fight. But yeah, same principle. Humans spent our entire evolutionary history being outmatched. We learned." Joraz practiced the stance again. "Why are you teaching me this? You could charge fortunes for this knowledge now." Marcus shrugged. "Could, yeah. But then you'd think we were trying to profit off being scary. Better to just share. Make friends. Show we're not interested in dominating anything except maybe the station's recycling efficiency ratings." Across the station, in a high-end training complex where professional fighters paid premium rates, Chen was turning down her 7th job offer this cycle. "Dr. Chen, we're prepared to triple our initial bid," the Vraxian combat promoter insisted. His translator added layers of desperation to every syllable. "Just consult. Help our fighters understand human techniques. You wouldn't need to participate directly." "I appreciate the offer," Chen said, not looking up from her datapad. "But I'm not interested in weaponizing research that was meant to save lives." "You already weaponized it." "I proved a point. There's a difference." She finally met his eyes. All 6 of them. "Besides, I've published everything I know. It's in public databases. Anyone who wants to learn human anatomy and apply it to combat can do so without paying me a single credit." The promoter's skin ridges flattened in defeat. He left without another word. Chen returned to her actual work. A comprehensive medical database cross-referencing human biology with the 73 species currently documented on CREV 9. It included nutritional incompatibilities, medication interactions, and emergency treatment protocols. Also, though she'd never explicitly state this, detailed anatomical diagrams highlighting every species' vulnerable points. Medical knowledge. Definitely medical knowledge. In the Commerce District, the human called Sarah, who ran a small cafe specializing in what she called adaptable cuisine, was explaining fermentation to a Zelthan chef. Your people can't process ethanol, but you can handle lactic acid, right? So instead of alcohol fermentation, we use bacterial fermentation. Same preservation principle, different chemistry. Humans had to figure this out because we settled in every climate zone on our planet. Had to make food last through conditions that would kill the crops. How did your species survive being so fragile? Sarah smiled while stirring something that smelled intentionally dangerous. We're not fragile. We're adaptable. Fragile breaks under pressure. Adaptable finds 17 ways to use that pressure for something useful. The Zelthan chef absorbed this while watching Sarah handle ingredients that were technically toxic to humans in large doses. You're cooking with poison, he observed. Trace amounts, adds flavor. We built up tolerances. She tasted the mixture, nodded, adjusted the seasoning. Humans have been playing with toxins for culinary purposes since we figured out fire. Capsaicin, theobromine, alcohol, caffeine, all technically poisonous. We just enjoy them anyway. That's insane. That's adaptation. In the station's administrative offices, a priority message arrived from Earth's diplomatic corps. Subject: Galactic Council Membership Reevaluation. Station Commander Velsh, whose species valued bureaucratic order above all else, read it 3 times before understanding the implications. Earth wasn't requesting reconsideration. The Council was requesting Earth's presence. Velsh forwarded the message to Chen, who'd been listed as the primary human contact for xenobiological concerns. She received it during a shift at the medical facility, opened it long enough to scan the contents, then archived it under political matters, irrelevant to current research. Her current research involved thoracian nerve regeneration, specifically optimizing recovery protocols for the exact injuries she'd inflicted on Grendax, who'd visited her lab twice now. The first time to demand answers, the second time to ask questions. You knew exactly what you were doing, he'd said, watching her work. Yes. Could you teach someone else to do it? Yes. Would you? Chen had looked up from her microscope. If they asked nicely and promised not to use it for anything I'd disapprove of, probably. Knowledge doesn't stay locked in one brain. That's not how humans work. We share, we adapt, we iterate. Grendax had left looking more unsettled than when he'd been paralyzed. Now, 3 cycles later, the galaxy was beginning to understand what that meant. Humans weren't conquerors. They were integrators. They moved into spaces others ignored, learned everything about everyone around them, and then made themselves useful in ways that seemed innocuous until you realized they'd quietly become indispensable. The janitor who knew every access route and security protocol. The cook who understood which foods could kill which species. The maintenance worker who'd memorized structural vulnerabilities. The doctor who could heal or harm with equal precision. All harmless, all watching, all learning. The arena lights still flashed red whenever someone mentioned humans and combat in the same sentence. But in training facilities across 47 systems, fighters were studying Earth's martial arts, not to fight humans, but to fight like them. And on CREV 9 station, in a small lab tucked away from the main corridors, Chen finished her paper on interspecies neurology. She uploaded it to the public database, free access, no restrictions. Then she started her next project, a comparative study of pain tolerance across species, with particular attention to psychological factors versus physiological ones. The galaxy had spent millennia cataloging threats based on what could crush, cut, or burn. They'd built entire classification systems around visible weapons: claws, fangs, venom, armor. They'd never thought to fear the species that smiled while taking notes, that seemed helpful while mapping weaknesses, that appeared soft while calculating exactly how much pressure it took to make something hard collapse from within. Chen sent a message to the Human Liaison Network, brief and clinical. Galactic assessment protocols updated. Human threat classification revised. Recommendation: continue current integration strategy. Maintain low profile. Be useful. They're more afraid of what they don't understand than what they do. The response came back within minutes from dozens of humans scattered across known space, all variations of the same acknowledgement. Understood. Proceeding as planned. Because that was the thing about humans. They'd learned their lessons on a planet that had tried to kill them with everything from predators to parasites to weather patterns. They'd learned that survival wasn't about being the strongest. It was about being underestimated until the moment you couldn't be ignored. And even then, making sure everyone remembered you'd rather be friends. Outside Chen's lab, station life continued. The pit operated under new restrictions, security monitored with upgraded protocols, aliens trained in human techniques while nervously checking if humans were training in return. They were, of course. Humans were always training. They just called it living on a death world and made it look like normal life.